Welcome everybody, I'm with food historian legend Annie Gray. Hello. We are making real, historic, traditional Christmas mince pies and Christmas punch or wassail. Cheers. Annie Gray, great to have you back on the show.
Great to be back.
Well, is Christmas one of those things that feels eternal, but like most other traditions, just basically made up by the Victorians?
Yes and no. I would say most of the modern Christmas certainly was made up by the Victorians, with a kind of sprinkling of 1950s as well. The idea of Christmas goes back a lot further. So, I mean, okay, we look out the window here today and it's absolutely beautiful. It's a glorious sunshiny day. It's freezing though. But the most normal thing in the British winter is pretty manky, pretty rainy, pretty miserable. If you're back in the medieval period or before then and you're a rural farmer, it's got the additional glory of mud. Most of your cattle has been slaughtered. You can't go out in the field. It's boring. You're poor. It's hideous. So, of course, the best thing to do is to light a huge fire, get really drunk and eat what you can do and try and forget about your woes. And that is something that you see universally throughout northern climes. Hideous, foul winter, look, it's really short days, let's get drunk and light a big fire and forget about everything. And then when the Christian church comes along and starts to adopt a lot of those early pagan, druid, call it what you will, festivals, they go, great, Christmas, okay, fine, let's stick it there. It's fine. We want a big celebration. So all these things come together and you end up with something, call it what you will, for a lot of cultures in the middle of winter, which is an excuse to get drunk and eat lots of food. So from a point of view of getting drunk, eating lots of food, and that idea of coziness and something to look forward to, goes back a long way. From the point of view of turkey, Christmas trees, buying loads of presents for people, decorating things and being really stressed out, that's mainly Victorian.
And as I learned in the podcast the other day, many of the things that we associate with Christmas foods, all actually from the Americas, things like turkey and potatoes. So it must have been post-Christopher Columbus anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, the idea of lots of food, that's the kind of pre-Columbian Christmas, if you like. But I mean, even say things like turkey, potatoes, not really associated really hard with Christmas until quite late on anyway. I mean, turkey comes in 1520s, 1530s. We start to see breeding pairs come in. We start to see farms for turkeys in France in the 1530s. They're mentioned in sumptuary laws later on. So turkey was there. Turkey was associated with Christmas, but it was associated with Christmas because it was big, impressive, and in season in the winter. It wasn't just Christmas. It was a festive, a winter seasonal dish. It wasn't the thing you ate on Christmas Day universally, really until the 1960s. So, you know, if you went to a Christmas in the Victorian period, you'd have beef. Or you might have goose if you were lower down the social scale. Turkey was there, but it wasn't the big thing that it is today. So even after Columbus, not all these things were immediately part of Christmas.
There's a lot of goose in Charles Dickens.
There is a lot of goose in Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens is really dealing with the working classes, and goose was a big working class dish. But not just working class. If you look at upper class cuisine, goose is there as well. It's tasty. It's a nice bird. And I think today as well, we tend to forget that birds like that, poultry, is seasonal. So goose, capon, even chicken and turkey as well, fowl like that were seasonal. And now we don't think of them as seasonal. We eat them all year round. But at that point, you know, think about Michaelmas goose, you know, all these things suddenly go, oh yeah, actually you're right. It was better from September through to February, wasn't it?
What are the 12 days of Christmas? And are they important food-wise?
They were very important for the medieval period and for those that were wealthy enough to afford to eat well throughout the whole period. So your traditional 12 days running from the 25th or the evening of the 24th, depending on who you speak to, through to the Epiphany, so the 5th or the 6th, depending on who you speak to. Generally in the UK it's the 6th. And that was the period of Christmas. So the idea was that Advent was a period of fast. This is the point where we were obviously Catholic still, pre-Reformation. So as with all fasting, if you were poor, you'd be eating stockfish, which you would repeatedly hit with a hammer for days and days and days and soak and then hate it. And it would be maggoty and awful and you'd force yourself to eat it because you're not allowed to eat anything that comes from an animal. And if you're wealthy, you're going to feast on porpoise and seal and beaver's tails because they're seafood, apparently. Puffin, things like that, and you're not really going to suffer any shortages. You're going to be absolutely fine. And then once you get to Christmas itself, the fasting period is over. Way meat feast. So you've got 12 days of feasting. And that was the idea, that you'd had your fast, now you feasted, and once you got to the 6th, you went back to your normal rhythm, where about half the year really were fish days and the other half were meat days. So gargantuan amounts of feasting if you were wealthy enough to afford it.
Is it funny that we now sort of have we get loose in the build-up to Christmas, office parties, whatever else, and then we all get all abstemious and sort of we worry at 1st of January the diet starts.
Well, I think it's
And actually
completely
that's part
wrong.
of it. Yeah, that's wrong, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, now Christmas starts in like August. I mean, there are Christmas things in the supermarkets before the children have gone back to school, which is surely really unfair. And you're absolutely right. You get to about, 3 o'clock on Christmas Day, and you're sitting around having eaten 5,000 calories in your meal, and you're still picking at bits of pig in blanket and thinking, I hate myself. And then on Boxing Day, all the newspapers come out with, we just told you to feast, but now you need to go on a diet, you filthy bastards.
And in fact, that's the other way around. So traditionally, that Christmas Day was the start. For us, it's sort of almost the end.
No, it finishes. And we do nothing for the Epiphany anymore. So,
Bring it back, that's what I say.
Back pre-Victorian, no Christmas cake, 12th cake. Push it all out with a bang. Doing it completely wrong.
Make Epiphany great again. That's what I say. Right. What do you want me to do first, boss?
Well, I think we should start with the drink.
The drink, yeah,
Christmas,
okay.
So we're going to make some wassail.
What's that?
Well, it's a lot of things to a lot of different people, including the good folks of Walthamstow, who I'm told go around today in a modern fashion with plastic bowls asking for booze.
Really?
Yes, and to some people it is about fertility and orchards, and to other people it's about mulling beer, and whoever you ask will come up with a different definition, but they'll all agree it's very old.
Okay, so some people it's just get a big bowl and people just pour whatever they have got in it.
Yeah, I mean, wassail is one of those things that comes from the medieval era, where it was, well, even before that actually, there was an Anglo-Saxon drink and drink response. So you would shout, drink ale, and everyone would go, wassail, and lots of reenactors today love doing that with their big tankards.
Well, how do you want me to start? What do I do?
Well, we're going to cook a 19th century recipe because there aren't very many recipes for wassail, and this one is from the 1890s. We're starting with some apples, so I think we'll do half the recipe. So if you can just core without breaking the skin.
Do we have a special corer, or am I just using a knife?
You're going to use a knife.
Okay.
I would have got you a piece of reindeer bone so that you could go straight through, but I didn't have it on me.
And with a knife, I just go like that, do I?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good luck.
You might want to, put it down on the board like that and just pretend it's someone you don't like.
Okay, there we go.
A lot of wassail recipes, in heavily inverted commas, involve brandy, port, beer,
Anything
whatever it
that
is.
comes to hand.
And a lot of the modern ones anyway are hot, and this one is a hot wassail. And they may have been hot in the past, they may have involved beer, they may have involved cider, they may have involved anything.
Sounds quite loose to me.
Yeah, it's really just a thing people drink in the autumn and in the winter. So it's sort of lots of different things.
Okay, what do you want me to do? I've cored that.
So we're going to put that on this nice foil sheet here. The main thing is just that there's no pips and things that you don't want to eat in there.
Okay.
Might
How many are we doing?
we're going to do 3.
Okay, here we go.
I mean, obviously, wassails are a celebratory thing, so ideally we should probably do about 10 and make it to feed 30 people. But
The whole of team history here. We'll just have it ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
There we go. So this is still something that people do today?
Yeah, well, it's as you said, people like to reinvent things to do with Christmas.
Okay.
So wassail is one of those things that's become very fashionable in the last few years, and it's been revived in lots of places. So I wouldn't worry too much if it's
A bit like sort of Magna Carta in the 17th century.
Yeah, there's a kind of craze for something that usually is prefixed with ye olde.
Yes.
Which, as you and I both know, would have been pronounced the old. So
Okay, I've made a bit of a balls up of this one.
yeah, well, it's all going to end up being cooked anyway, so let's not worry too much about it. You can't get starved, can you?
No. There you go. Right,
Excellent.
beautifully
Right,
poured.
we're going to put a little bit of butter into the middle of each of those, and also we will
Sort of
rub the
that
outsides.
all together,
Yeah,
okay.
and we'll rub it all around as well.
Okay.
This is one of those things where it became a bit of a
Like
fashionable.
Look at that. Butter nice and snug in there.
Became very fashionable in the 18th century to do wassail because that was all about nostalgia, as Christmas always is.
Just don't change, do we?
Sadly. So you can make a non-alcoholic wassail. Right, so let's put those in the oven and roast them. Actually, let's add a bit of sugar first. Slightly better flavour. Let's put a bit of sugar into each
God,
one.
not messing about. We haven't even had the alcohol yet. Jeepers creepers.
Right, stick those in the oven and we'll roast them until they go all soft and squidgy and nobody is it.
Okay.
Or you could drop them.
I'll just drop them
In the oven.
Yeah, obviously.
Your oven was really clean till I arrived.
Yeah. Oh, there we go.
Right.
Perfect. Lovely.
Right. That's a baking tray that will need to go in the dishwasher afterwards.
Yep.
It's fine.
My role in life is cleaning baking trays. Not as much a prep chef as a post chef.
A plongeur, as it were.
Oh, is that what it is? Plongeur. There you
A
go.
washer-upper.
Plongeur. Right, what are we plunging into next?
Next, we're going to make the alcoholic liquid that we will eventually pour
Great.
onto our apples.
Okay.
Which in this case, very, very late Victorian. You know, the wine of choice for your late Victorian dude would be a nice German hock.
Really?
Yeah, all this French wine.
It's all new.
It's good, I quite like it, but really what we want is a German hock. The kind of, well, it's basically Blue Nun. And you can use Blue Nun for this recipe if you can still get it. So we've got a bottle of hock here, and we're going to put that in our pan.
So I've never heard of hock. It's a soft and fruity Deutsche Landwein, Rhine. So it's in on the River Rhine, I see.
Yeah, it's not
Interesting.
dissimilar to a Riesling or a sort of Silvaner, those kind of things that we would go, oh, Alsatian wine, we like those. Hock is just a little bit further along. Queen Victoria had a vineyard in the area named after her.
Really?
So it's really, really popular as a wine for the Victorians.
Listen to that, folks.
That's a good sound.
All the whole thing?
Yeah. We then want cloves, ginger, mace, cinnamon and cardamom. So, yes, marvellous. We're already using that. So. Let me just grab some of these.
Okay, cloves, cinnamon.
Yeah, about half what's there. Some of that.
Very scientific. You're just throwing it all in.
You know, the Victorians did measure things quite a lot, but of course if you knew what you were doing, you didn't need to.
I guess the spirit of wassail is it's quite loose and it's quite relaxed.
As I say, there really aren't any written recipes before about the 18th century, and even when they are written down,
They vary.
yeah, and spices vary. Some people's spices are really, really strong. Some people's spices have spent 6 months on a ship getting across from the
true.
Indias. I always think just use a bit more if you're not unsure. That will do.
Okay, that looks really disgusting. It's a
yeah.
sort of
Hang on, I'm finished.
light brown. Now it's got
Cinnamon.
various bits of spice floating in it. We've created
Yeah.
a muddy, scummy cocktail.
We have. So chuck that on the heat.
There we go.
Right, I'm just going to add a bit more sugar. Not all of
A
this.
bit more sugar.
Not going to add it all.
That is like a basin of sugar. My
Sugar
goodness.
had really come down in price by the 1890s, and you being hyperactive.
Wow. Brush your teeth, kids.
So what we're going to do now, once this gets to boiling point, is we're effectively going to make a custard. A lot of sauces in the past were thickened with egg yolks. That makes them very velvety and very lovely. And you know, I mean, corn flour is easier, but egg yolks are, I think, a nicer texture. It also shows how old the recipe is, because using egg yolks like that is quite an old-fashioned thing.
Okay.
So I'm going to put one whole egg in there, and then one egg yolk. It's not going to thicken it much. It'll be a sort of creme anglaise texture.
Crikey.
Oh yeah, nothing but the best. I mean, if I was being really good, I would filter out all of the whole spices, but I'm not. So now, because I'm brave, I'm going to pour all the spices in here, which we may live to regret if we're munching on them. We can sieve it if you're particularly not fond of crunching on coriander seeds.
Right, what are we going to eat with our delicious wassail?
Well, I think we've got to go for mince pies, haven't we?
The ultimate Christmassy
one
snack.
of the actual most venerable foods of Christmas.
Oh, it is traditional.
I hate the word tradition.
Sorry, okay. It is old.
It's but it's authentic.
Yeah.
Yes, it does go back a long way. So mincemeat, mince pies, Christmas pies as they were often known, although Christmas pies also meant something else. Late medieval, Tudor, etc.
Was there meat in a mince pie?
Yes.
Oh, right.
And we're starting with it.
Oh, we're actually going to do, okay.
We are
Meaty.
making Eliza Acton's mincemeat, which is from 1845.
Okay.
And we are going to start with the most British of meats, which is, of course, roast beef. And we want about half a pound, so 225 grams in new money, which is probably about half of that, which you are going to mince up, please.
Okay, stand by.
So the original mincemeats were indeed minced meat and other things. If you look at Tudor recipes, you've got about a third meat in there, and then a third suet, and the other third is dried fruit.
So I know I obviously know this, but there might be people listening or watching who don't know what suet is.
Suet is the hard fat that sits around the kidneys of a mammal. You have suet, I have suet, and cows have a lot of suet.
Okay.
So it's usually cow suet, and what happens is you chop that fat up, and because it's a hard fat, it behaves in really interesting ways, and one of the things it does is it gives a really lovely mouthfeel, very velvety feel to things when you eat them. Another thing is it makes very light pastry, and another thing is that it melts very pleasingly, so it gives mincemeat that kind of beautiful texture that you associate, I suppose, with mincemeat.
Who discovered that? Okay, so just mincing is like what, cubing it? Like
very, very
making
fine
it small?
dice.
Yeah.
So we're going to chop that up nice and small. A lot of the early mince pies used beef, some used mutton. There are versions with fish and eggs for fast days.
So they were savoury. It was a savoury dish.
It was a mixture. The demarcation that we've got today between sweet and savoury wasn't one that was used so much in the past because sugar was so expensive, certainly in the Tudor period, that it was used almost as a spice. So, of course, in the 17th century, Britain started to colonise the West Indies, brought in slave labour. That whole awful part of our history starts, and sugar started to become a bit cheaper. But at this point, so Tudor medieval mincemeats, very much sugar being used as a spice. And what you see throughout the next 200 or 300 years is the meat quantity slowly dwindles. So by the time you get to the 19th century, which is the mincemeat we're making, you've got very little meat left in them, just enough to give it a bit of a back note. And then by the 20th century, most mincemeats are meat-free but not vegetarian because they still have suet in.
Wow. And while we're cooking this, no conversation about Christmas and the history of Christmas is complete without asking about what is the reality of Oliver Cromwell, the Puritans during the Republic. Did they ban Christmas?
No. They didn't ban Christmas, they did legislate against what they saw as its excesses. So there is no legislation to ban mince pies, not least because mince pies were not actually associated with Christmas as so much the whole festive season. What happened was that the Puritans and especially the Scottish Presbyterians felt that Christmas was a really bad thing. They did have a point. Christmas had become associated with rioting, with football, with the working classes getting really drunk, having sex with loads of different people. I mean, just Christmas had become...
Sounds
Christmas.
rubbish.
Yeah, terrible. Very commercialised as well. Too many orange sellers profiteering off the back of the demand for oranges. And they felt that it was both pagan, in that really it had just been adopted by the Christian Church and had never really changed, but at the same time papist. The crux point came in 1644 when Christmas fell on a day that was supposed to be not any form of religious day, it was a normal day. So unfortunately the English Parliament was forced to join the Scottish Parliament in banning Christmas Day as a celebration. So it wasn't that they banned Christmas, it was that they banned the stuff around it and they wanted Christmas Day to just be any other day. And nobody else wanted that. So there were incidences of rioting, there were incidences of people apparently having their goose taken away by soldiers. John Evelyn complained he tried to go to a church service on Christmas Day and that got broken up. But it wasn't as simple as, oh, Cromwell banned Christmas. It was a bit more of a nuanced picture.
Culture wars.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Nothing
Christmas
new.
was cancelled. So no, there were incidences of some people being beaten up by soldiers. There were diarists, John Evelyn was one who tried to celebrate Christmas and ended up in the cells or being... It's all very, yes there was, yes there wasn't, but either way, we restored it in 1660 and then everyone forgot about it for 100 years and all the bon ton went, oh, I don't think I like it after all. Contrary as ever.
Right.
In the bowl.
Is that all right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That meat has been diced to within an inch of its
That's
life.
good dicing. Right, So that's your meaty base. That is your meat in your mincemeat, and it is minced, so it is minced meat.
Okay, yeah, good.
Yeah,
No,
right,
it is.
that was
I've minced that meat. I'm
It
very
was good.
pleased with
You
myself.
minced it well. And now we want to put in some currants and some raisins.
Okay, handful.
So, the lot.
All of it?
Well, we want about a pound.
Whoa.
That's probably that's slightly over a pound. It is about a pound. Yeah, if you want to keep going. Marvellous. Save a few if you can nibble on. And the same with those.
Whoa.
Yeah, good old raisins. Then we want some the candied peel to go in there.
yes, okay,
I mean, this is very much a rich person's dish.
Oh, yeah. Is this the whole thing going in?
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah, you couldn't just... There's a lot of nice ingredients from all
Yeah,
over
this
the world.
is also slightly under half the recipe.
Half?
Well, you didn't have a small bathtub, so...
God, you make it in the bathtub.
Then we're going to mince up, I think, probably about 3 apples.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Like really mince, like smash them up.
Yep. I'm going to just grate the zest of these 2 lemons as well to go in. You've also got mincemeats for fast days. So you also had egg-based mincemeats and fish-based mincemeats.
Don't be silly. Mackerel mincemeat.
Well, it's not, I know it sounds kind of awful, and I will be fair, it's not amazing, but of course there's so little fish in there that really all you taste is the spice and the
So the
fruit.
fish is just for texture.
Texture and also wealth and prestige. Again, you know, we have to remember, I suppose, that people today talk about how they would struggle to be vegetarian in the past because there wasn't any vegetarian food, and actually that's not quite true because so many people couldn't afford meat. So depending on who you read, estimates are anything between kind of 70 and 95% of the population largely eating a vegetarian diet most of the time because meat was simply really, really expensive. So eating something like this with just a tiny bit of meat in really is saying, well, hey, I could put loads in, I don't have to, but look at how wealthy I am with this spice, with this imported dried fruit, with this beef, and then later on as well with alcohol. So this really is just an incredibly prestigious dish for its time.
How's this?
Excellent.
Should I put these in?
Yeah, and you can also put in
It's the tiniest
The
little
zest.
chopping knife I've ever used. Ding, 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 ding. There we go, come on.
right.
Okay,
Since your
apples going
mincing
in.
skills are
Oh,
on
don't
fire.
make me mince anything else. Okay, what's next?
You
Lemon.
bet. Oh, just checking how many. 1. Well, that's too large. I really like lemons. I don't know about you.
Oh, I'm led by you. I'll do whatever you want. Come on, let's go
Go
2.
with a small one to start off with.
Okay. So including skin.
Everything. So these have been boiled. One of the really, really lovely things in the past that we just don't do a lot now is boiling entire lemons, mushing them up, making them into stuff. So there's an amazing 18th century lemon pudding recipe from Rest Park, actually. And it's basically lemon curd, but to make the lemon curd, you mash up 2 lemons. And it is the most lemony thing ever. You know,
Well,
you have
I'll bet.
modern lemon tarts and you just go, oh, this is so insipid.
That's what we come to you for, is the big influence link, saying consuming an entire mashed up lemon is very lemony. I mean, that really is, Annie. That's why we pay the big bucks. That's why you're a national treasure.
Yeah.
Is that mashed up enough?
No.
Okay.
Come on, there are big lumps there.
Oh God, all right, I see what you're getting at here.
You did. The thing is, you've set yourself up for this because you did such a good job
There we
on
go,
the
come on.
apple. Yeah, see?
That is mushy now, isn't
That
it?
is excellent. You can put that in
Okay.
now.
Ooh, this tiny little knife.
A little bit of salt and some nutmeg and some ginger,
Okay.
all of which is in there. So, and we're going to put in probably about 2/3 of the sugar.
Not the sugar again.
Yeah, we want about 2/3 sugar.
God. It's just not good, is it?
Well, it's only once a year. And stop. See how exact that was?
Very exact.
And then we're going to put in some sherry.
Sherry. Wassail's getting a bit chilly.
And then some brandy.
Napoleon cognac.
Right. You can use any booze for this, actually. You can use, I've done it with port, I've done it with ginger wine, I've done it with all sorts of things. So then, if you give that a good old mix.
Mixed with my broken spoon. Oh my gosh.
See, when you mix it, you realise it's not that much sugar compared to
No,
the rest
not
of the
at all.
ingredients.
Not at all. That's right.
Doesn't that look so much nicer than a modern mincemeat? There's no brown goo coming off it.
I agree. I agree, this does look really delicious. The extraordinary mixture of meat, currants, sultanas, raisins,
And suets.
apples. Oh, is the suet coming in?
Yeah, we've just got enough.
And this is the what? The fat around the something
This is
lining?
the hard fat around the kidneys. Although this is the modern version of suet, which is the processed hard fat around the kidneys. So we haven't had to devein it.
Do you ever think, when you're studying your amazing recipes, like the things that humans have tried? I mean, you know, who thought mix this with that and rip that out of there and stick that in there? I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it?
But my squeamish factor is quite low, I think, partly because people often say, oh, I would never eat that, it's absolutely disgusting, or tripe mincemeat, ew, or brawn, oh, it's a pig's head, or whatever it is. And actually, I've tried some really awful modern things. And you sort of think, don't laugh at our ancestors or think yuck, because some of the things that we eat now are just...
No, it's a matter of respecting them, that they worked it out.
Yeah. One of the nastiest things I've ever eaten was a vegan mozzarella, which was made of rice starch and didn't behave anything like mozzarella should have done and tasted vaguely of rice.
Vegan cheese is rubbish.
Yeah, it is.
I'm afraid that is a fact,
it's
listeners. I love a vegan burger.
Yeah.
Vegan cheese, we haven't got there yet. It's okay.
No, and I sort of think there's a really, really good vegan food around that doesn't involve having to make something that's essentially not vegan out of vegan ingredients.
That's right. It's like paper straws. We're just not there yet. We're doing it because it's good for the environment, but we have to be honest about it. Okay, what's next?
Next, we're going to put them into pastry cases.
Let's do it.
And I thought instead of doing big ones like the Tudors or little raised pies, which would be a lot of work, we would go full-on Victorian and use puff pastry. So in the miracle that is the modern world,
It comes pre-wrapped.
it does provide it.
Pre-rolled.
What I would say is,
Pre-flattened.
if you're buying it, always buy the stuff that's all butter. Otherwise, it tastes horrible. But this is conveniently pre-flattened. Very much in the spirit of the Victorians, I think,
Yeah, very
actually,
much
to have
so.
cheats and shortcuts. And what we're going to do, would you like to cut out the pastry or do you want to butter the tin?
I'll cut the pastry out.
Go for it. We've
I
got
used to do this with my grandma. We made cookies every
a
Christmas.
mug which should be big enough to do the sides, and then the glass should be big enough to do the lids.
Okay, ready?
And I will butter.
It's not easy. There we go.
No, it's the problem with using mugs, but I always think this is kind of quite a nice impromptu, speed buttering.
So what is it? What's going on with the Victorians? Why does it we seem to think so Christmas goes into overdrive in that time?
There are lots of different factors really, but what you see is around the 1840s, there's a real feeling of the idea that Christmas has kind of lost the plot. It's been dwindling. The Georgians weren't particularly into Christmas, or at least the fashionable society wasn't particularly into Christmas. They thought it was a bit of a dreary thing to kind of have to visit people and it's winter, and fine with the meals and the feasting and all that stuff, but the rest of it, bit sort of plebeian and excuse to get drunk. And it started dwindling. So you see the number of bank holidays in a year dwindle, you see the 12 days dwindle down. Obviously it's the Industrial Revolution, or the first phase of it. So there's not so many people needing to sort of sit on their arse the whole of December, because now you're working in factories. And obviously also agrarian husbandry has moved on, so you can now keep your cattle a lot more throughout winter and things like that. So there's this feeling in the 1840s that Christmas has lost its way and that we're going to lose it. It's going to go the way of all things. And lots of people at that point are saying this is not right. Christmas should be about hospitality. There's a real sense of nostalgia. You know, today we're all about, oh, the Victorians, that's when Christmas was great. And the Victorians thought it was great in the Tudor period. So they decided that actually it should be put back to what they thought of as Christmas, which was about hospitality and charity. And you didn't want to like bring poor people into your house because they might steal something, but you did want to give to charity and that kind of thing. And I suppose today we think of Charles Dickens and Prince Albert as having single-handedly invented Christmas, because those are the iconic figures that are always talked about. But it's not true. Dickens was one of many writers who talked about it. He was just one of the most popular. And Albert gets all of the glory for inventing the Christmas tree, which was a German tradition. It was present in this country already in the shape of German bakeries. Queen Charlotte, who had a yew tree in the 1780s at Kew, you know. Let's not give any more credit to Albert than he needs, and definitely give no more credit to Dickens than he deserves, which is less than he probably should get, because I'm not a fond of Dickens.
You're not?
No, he writes such terrible women.
Oh,
Don't
yeah.
forget to leave. You've got a little bit left to put some lids on.
Well,
as
no, I'm
well.
going to make a lid now. I'm going to do lids.
Right. Well, let's put some mincemeat in
Okay.
there in that case.
Okay. So you're loading the mince into the pies.
I am.
Shall I put a lid on?
Yeah. I've got a terrible habit of overstuffing my mince pies, by the way.
So just place the lid like that.
Yeah. I'll give it a bit of a
There you go. Now, this is all classes, because you mentioned that there's different things for different classes in terms of what's going in the mince pies. This is quite a
This is a kind of
universal
middle class recipe,
middle class.
really. I mean,
Okay.
there's a lot of booze, a lot of spice, a lot of meat in this, and it's quite nice meat. And Eliza Acton's very much aiming at a middle class audience. She was really, I suppose, in some ways, the quote unquote real Mrs. Beeton. As in, everybody always thinks Mrs. Beeton was this iconic Victorian cook who wrote about what to do for the middle class housewife, but most of Beeton's recipes were plagiarised from Eliza Acton. And Eliza Acton's a really good recipe. So this is solidly kind of middle class gentry level. If you're working class, you would probably buy your mince pies because you wouldn't have an oven, and you might well buy cheap ones with tripe in. You're probably going to have a goose rather than turkey or beef or venison or game or partridge or swan or bustard or heron on Christmas Day. And if you're upper class, you're going to have everything in the world on your table. So meals at that point were really very, very large. And you would expect to have your normal meal pattern, really, at Christmas. And it wasn't, again, it's not just about Christmas Day. A lot of Victorian families would entertain at the beginning of December, and they would have shooting parties, and they would entertain throughout that Christmas period. And then Christmas Day may well have been just for family. So it's really, that emphasis we put on one day is very Victorian. And it's quite late Victorian as well. It's the Victorians that rename plum pudding Christmas pudding, for example. And it's the Victorians that decide that 12th cake, which used to be eaten on 12th night, should be Christmas cake. And they are responsible, really, for giving us this obsession with everything being about the 25th of December.
a big day.
They gave us the shopping sales as well, so really, there's a lot not to thank them for.
And they probably went, right, everyone back to work. We ain't got time for this multi-day celebration.
And one of the things that's really interesting about Christmases past is how varied the meals were. Bearing in mind that now we are effectively told that we should all be eating turkey and Brussels sprouts and pigs in blankets, which are really quite modern. And there's not a lot of variety.
I'm a weird guy. I love turkey and all trimmings. I would eat it in August. If someone said, let's have a big Christmas lunch in August, I'd be like, bring it on. Yeah.
Why not? Do it in August then.
I should. It's a huge pain in the ass, that's why.
Well, roast dinners are terrible. One of the interesting things I think is that we insist on making these roast dinners. Let's pop those in the oven.
Right, let's go. This is the big moment.
Whoops.
Here we go. It's going in the
Right.
oven. Cold wassail. Slightly loses its...
It's a little bit more like cold sick, isn't it, at that
Yeah, a
point?
little bit sicky.
Yeah.
But we have got warm wassail for everyone, don't panic. Okay, 15 minutes is up.
Smells ready to me.
We're going to look in
Go
there.
on.
This is exciting, isn't it? Oh my goodness. That is amazing. They look like little fluffy vol au vent. They're like no mince pie I've ever seen.
Well, people make them with short crust, and that's fine, and short crust is fine, but there's nothing, I don't think there's anything to beat crunching through all the puff layers and then hitting that really dense, beautiful mincemeat within it.
I am salivating. Look
So,
at that perfect
I mean, these
non-stick.
are huge. But then, if you can't have a huge mince pie at Christmas, when can you?
And do you know how many people? Do you know how many people usually come to our History Hit recordings? 0 people. Do you know how many people are here today? Lots of people from History Hit. Do you know why? Because you're cooking these pies.
Christmas mince pies. Come on, it's one of the best things about Christmas.
Oh my goodness. Right, we're going to try. Okay.
Sorry, cook's hanging.
Right, we're going to try a pie.
Watch out, they will be really hot.
I can't resist that. I can't stop myself.
And I'm just giving you the warning so
Okay,
that
and then
when you burn your mouth,
incinerate, yeah.
I'm not responsible.
Oh. That's the most delicious thing I've ever eaten in my life. It's not, the texture's great, isn't it?
Meaty mincemeat has got depth of flavour, texture, complexity. It's a different ballgame. You know, it's like instant coffee versus, you know, real coffee. There's a space in most people's lives for instant coffee, but when you have the real thing, yeah.
Wow. You've introduced me to wassail, to these proper mince pies. What would you bring back from Christmases past?
Food-wise, I would bring back 12th cake instead of Christmas cake, because Christmas cake isn't something that a lot of people know when to eat. They like it, but they're not sure what to do with it. Whereas if you have it on 12th night, there's a clearly defined moment to eat it. You can look forward to it, and it brings Christmas to a really lovely close. So Christmas doesn't peter out with a whimper, but goes out with a proper bang.
So you would have the 12 days of Christmas reinstated as
I
well.
would have the 12 days of Christmas reinstated, and I'd forget all this. I would ban Christmas going into their shops before about the 20th. All this Christmas trees going up on December the 1st malarkey. What is this? The needles drop by about the 13th, especially in central heated houses. I'd also bring back a range of flavours and stop us being so obsessed with one set of dishes on Christmas Day. Eat mince pies throughout the whole season and have 15 different types of mincemeat and drink wassail and, you know, have loads of different types of food on the table. And I think Christmas should be what we want it to be and not what we're told it should be. Get rid of the shoulds, have only what we want.
Thank you for coming on the show. What is your book called so everyone can live this out in their own kitchen?
It's called At Christmas We Feast.
Annie Gray, At Christmas We Feast, and we will thanks to you. Thanks for watching this video on the History Hit YouTube channel. You can subscribe right here to make sure you don't miss any of our great films that are coming out. Or if you are a true history fan, check out our special dedicated history channel, historyhit.tv. You're going to love it.